Good afternoon guys, Dark Purple Shadow here today, and today I'm talking about the wild west that is purchasing a laptop. Let me run it back and tell you a quick story. My little sister came to me and said, hey, I need a laptop, help me out, help me choose a laptop. You're the computer guy in the family, you know what's going on, please help me purchase a laptop. A bit about her, she's about 13-14 years old. She needs a laptop for two things, studying and Roblox. So I don't need a NASA super space computer, I just need a laptop that runs things relatively well. I personally am of the opinion that when you're getting a laptop, you want something decent, because a lot of laptops that are at the lowest of the low end are pretty much manufactured e-waste. Shout out Linus. And those laptops are not even worth your time. You can pretty much browse Reddit before it crashes and blue screens because it's overwhelmed by the actual steps involved in processing a Reddit page. But beside the point, when it comes to laptops today, let's start with the processors. Intel, confusing. Yeah, Intel is confusing. The generations, they've gone a bit weird. Some of them have 5 numbers after the generation. Some of them have 4. I still don't understand what I ended up buying. So that you have the 14th, 13th, 12th gen available on a lot of laptops. I ended up getting a 1235U i5, I believe. I think it was alright. I still don't understand. Apparently it comes with Intel's integrated graphics, which we'll get onto later. But Intel is not the big problem when it comes to processors. Now, if you know anything about buying a new laptop, you know that the Ryzen mobile processors are named in the most absurd, godforsaken way. The Ryzen processors, if you don't know what you're looking for, will sell you something you think is really good, and they'll sell you complete trash. What I mean is, the numbering scheme for the Ryzen processors is not the same as a numbering scheme for the Ryzen processors on desktop. So the laptop processors have a completely weird naming scheme, and actually I believe it's the 3rd letter that actually depicts whether it's a good processor or not. So you can have a processor that begins with 7, but it's worse than the processor that begins with 9. Or worse than the processor that begins with 6. I don't know. I still don't understand it. There's Ryzen 5s, Ryzen 7s, I don't know. To this day, I don't understand. I'll put up an infographic on screen to help you kind of piece it together, but I'm not going to sit there and decode this DaVinci problem. I'm just not going to do it. It's not worth my time. But just know that Ryzen processors at the laptop level are confusing, and I feel they do this on purpose to basically scam people. On a low level, they're trying to scam people, and it's a very bad business practice. They should make things transparent and easy to understand, but they're not doing that, and it's very upsetting because they have some good laptop processors, and then they're quite reasonably priced, some of the good ones, but you need to be careful you don't get absolute trash when you're paying a decent amount for a laptop. When it comes to graphics processing units or GPUs, if you're not paying over £500, I'm talking closer to £1,000, which is around $1,200 US, you're not getting a dedicated NVIDIA GPU. You're just not doing it. It's not happening in this day and age. And the truth is, you're not really missing out on much, because a lot of the dedicated NVIDIA GPUs, they've really down regulated. The TDPs are really low, and actually some of them are actually worse than the integrated graphics you get on some of the processors I'm looking at. So honestly, if you're going to get one, make sure that you know what the TDP is, because there are instances where a 4070 can be outperformed by a 4060 if the TDPs are different. So just be very careful when it comes to mobile GPUs. It is not a straightforward process, and I feel like it's this way on purpose. And I don't know if it's just the chip manufacturers themselves or if it's the actual companies who make the laptops. I feel like it's a bit of both, unfortunately. So yeah, be careful about those. Now, when it comes to integrated graphics, Intel and AMD both have good offerings here, and I really recommend that you save your money and just go for these. Realistically, you're not going to be playing Cyberpunk on ray tracing full frames on a laptop. I really don't recommend doing that. If you're going to do that, just get a desktop, sit down and play it. Now, if you're rich enough to afford a bad boy laptop and a bad boy PC, go for it, but most people aren't. And if you're going to do that sort of high-end gaming, just get a PC. It's going to run you part of the course better. But when it comes to laptops, if you're going to get something like that, I'd say go for the Intel HD graphics. There's the XE graphics, the Iris graphics, I can't remember what the ones, but nearly all of them are pretty damn good. You can look at benchmarks online. They're all pretty good, and actually some of the AMD ones are pretty good as well. The Vega graphics that come with some of the higher end AMD processors, they're really good. So don't be tricked into buying a dedicated GPU for your laptop, because usually some of these dedicated GPUs don't really perform that well because they're not given all the power they need. And actually, you might not want a high powered laptop if you're worried about the next point, which is battery life. Battery life is crazy, like it's all over the place. I didn't really care about this one because my sister's probably going to have it most of the time at home plugged in, but if it's a consideration you have making, look at battery life benchmarks for most kind of available laptops. Again, usually the more powerful your processor, the worse the battery life. They don't really increase the battery size with the processors. That's another L. Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. If you're really worried about battery life, I recommend going for an ARM processor, because apparently they kill it when it comes to that. The Macs, I'm not a big Mac fan, but Apple's quite good at making laptops, and the Mac processors are really good. Like the Apple M series or whatever. They're really efficient. So those ones are like the king of the hill when it comes to this. When it comes to Windows and, you know, normal laptops, I do recommend looking into ARM if you want just a long battery life. Next area is just in general the build quality, and you're gonna miss out on a lot of features if you try and budget. Unfortunately, I had to buy my sister a laptop with a TN panel, and it also didn't have a backlit keyboard, which was really annoying because I think backlit keyboards are really important. So I made a mistake there. So a TN panel, the one that I got was apparently IPS-like. So I kind of got scammed there because I thought it was an actual IPS panel. It ended up being an IPS-like panel, which I don't think it's the same, but maybe it's a higher end TN panel, so it's not too bad. Maybe there's not a big difference between the high end TN panels and the low end IPS panels. But the creme de la creme, if you want to spend big money and you're spending close to £1,000 or $1,200, get an OLED. OLED laptops look really good. You can't really go wrong. And I think, I might be wrong, OLEDs are pretty efficient as well. Maybe I'm wrong with that. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they're very inefficient. But yeah, they look really good. It doesn't matter. And obviously look at the refresh rate as well. Other things to consider when it comes to build quality is, does a laptop break as soon as you look at it? Some of the ones I looked at, they had issues with hinges. Even some of the higher end laptops, they had issues around build quality. So please be mindful of that. It's a wild west out there when it comes to laptops. I know I had a bit of a rant about it, but you need to be very careful because these companies want to make sure you're so confused that you buy a cheap product for a high price. That is the end of it. Please subscribe if you like my takes. Dark purple shadow, safe. And just a quick point about RAM. RAM is quite cheap, but a lot of these laptop manufacturers are cheaping out on it a lot. I'm talking 8GB of RAM instead of the 16 you should really be getting in 2024. Now, the laptop I ended up buying for my sister has, I think, 8GB of RAM, but it has an ability to have 16 upgraded, which means you can add another 8GB stick called a SODIMM stick, I believe, and you can open it up and add it in. Now, I can't be asked to do that right now, but if she needs it, I would do it for her. Yeah, just take that into account. At the higher end, you can get absurd amounts of RAM, 32, 64 gig, but try and go for 16 gig. Honestly, I didn't. I probably might not regret it, maybe, but the amount of RAM Chrome uses these days is crazy. So yeah, try and get as high as RAM as possible. Peace.